Okay. All right. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on the time. Like Astrit mentioned, thank you for being here. This is a webinar, part of our webinar series that we are exploring Albanian excellence through different themes. Today's webinar is our third, and it's titled "Collaboration is Key: Contributing to Open Source Software." It's my honor to join Adem, our amazing guest speakers today, and all of you in attendance to moderate this important discussion. My name is Ray. I'm the Vice President and the College Mentorship Initiative Lead for SAPS. Currently, I'm in North Carolina. I've been in the US for around 10 years, and I plan on starting medical school this July at Wake Forest University School of Medicine. I'm joined by Adem, who is going to introduce himself in a little bit.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adem Hoxha. I'm the Tech and Data Webinar Lead here. I was born here in Dallas, Texas. I've been here my whole life, and I'm a graduate student studying cybersecurity and a software engineer.
All right. And before Adem takes over and does his opening remarks, I want to spend the next couple of minutes just to introduce everyone to the organization behind the webinar. So we're SAPS, or Shoqata Akademike dhe Profesionale Shqiptare. Our goal is to foster academic excellence and professional advancement for Albanians here in the US, but also in the diaspora. Our vision is to guide students through high school, through college, and then into the professional world. And we want to do that through two main initiatives. Our first one is our high school mentorship initiative, which connects high school students with mentors who are in college. And then our second initiative is our college mentorship initiative, which in its core has our webinar series, which is an initiative that aims to provide a platform for professionals and college students to join and learn from one another through group networking. Our high school mentorship initiative was very successful in our first cycle last year. It offered personalized mentorship, comprehensive guidance, and community building. We had mentees from around 11 United States, 21 US high schools, and 8 high schools in Albania and Kosovo. We also had 45 mentors from 20 US states, and they represented 33 colleges and institutions. After our in-person event in Washington, D.C., one of the things that we wanted to answer, or one of the questions was, how can we bridge the gap between students and professionals? And one way we thought about doing it is through organizing this webinar series. This webinar series has unique themes that encompass law, medicine, engineering, technology and data, finance, and much more. Our goal is not only to help college students connect with professionals and learn from their story, but also develop their profile and engage culturally with people who are from the same background. Now, before I introduce or allow Adem to do his remarks, I want to give a shout out to the team behind the webinar series. You did meet me and Adem, but I want to give a shout out to Clea, our event coordinator, Jenny, our marketing director, and then our member of the webinar team, Dafina, Heralda, Irena, and Diana. All of them will be featured in the coming months as they organize their own webinars. As I mentioned prior, this is the third webinar in the series, so if you've missed our two webinars prior, I really encourage everyone to go to our YouTube channel and check those out, but also keep an eye out for future webinars as we will continue this series for the next month until November. Now I'm going to leave the room to Adem to do his opening remarks. Adem, you have the floor.
All right. Well, I want to start off by saying open source software. It's a term that's thrown around everywhere. And if you're early in your education or career, you might not know really what it is or what it means. So what is it? So the Open Source Initiative is a community, an organization that has a widely accepted definition. And I picked a few that I thought were important, a few that I thought were grasp the idea of what open source software is. And the first one is access. It's in the name, open source. If you hide the source code of a project or a product, then We can't read it. We can't modify it. We won't be able to improve upon it. Yeah. This is good to have for anything because it allows people to get together, analyze it, and work together and improve upon, already existing code. The next important definition that I thought, or portion of the definition, was the free distribution, modification, and use of the software. If you restrict these things, if you let people look at your code and see what's happening behind the scenes, but if you block them from modifying it, it's useless. You need to be able to allow people to make the changes they think that the code deserves, that the project needs. You need to allow them to go in and fix that small issue that they may have found while working on their project and they were using your library, for example. And beyond that, at the end, there's no discrimination against people, groups, or fields. Open source software should be open to everybody, no matter who they are, what industry they work in, or what field they study. This allows ideas from all over, from different groups, to come together and be added on to whatever project or product we think might need these changes. So why is it important? Why do we need open source software? This is something that I've believed for a long time, and I think I needed to kind of dig down and find out why. How can I break this down? I mean, the most obvious thing is that open source software drives everything. It would be very hard to find something in the wild that isn't supported by open source software. The modern web. I mean, there are so many portions of the web that have been maintained by the community. There are web frameworks like PHP Flask, Django, Express. Those are all open source. Those are all used everywhere. I know I use it at work. There's OpenSSL. There's a popular, encryption library for secure internet traffic. That's open source. That's used a lot. And I know that I wouldn't feel safe putting in a password anywhere without OpenSSL. And there's things like React, Vue, Angular, the more popular or visible things. These are libraries that allow us to actually build the web pages that we see and use. Those are all open source. And open source software, the community aspect of it, the contributions that people put in, it helps us keep technology alive and out of the trash. That you have a phone, you've had it for a long time, and the company that created the phone says, oh, this is too old. We don't feel like adding any more updates for this. We don't want to support this anymore. Okay. So if you were passionate enough and you want to keep using your phone, you don't want to throw it away, you could go create an open source project to support this phone. For example, on the right, I have Postmarket OS. That is a project, a community dedicated to keeping abandoned phones like this functional. They support a ton of, I guess, Android phones. A lot of them are much older, don't have support from Samsung or Android, and they allow you to keep using it. And things like operating systems too. A lot of the modern operating systems that we use today are built off of open source kernels, like the Linux kernel. We might not use these too much in our day-to-day life, but a lot of business and science relies on these Linux servers to function, to run. And I guess last but not least, it's important to remove any barrier to improving something, I think. We want to be able to go in, fix an issue, or add something that we think an app might need. It's a good way to keep things up to date, relevant, and if you're using a free product, it's a great way to give back. Because a lot of these open source projects, they don't charge. The most they'll ask for is a donation. So if you can go in and support the project, the initiative, then I think that's a very good way to give back. And beyond giving back to the code, the technical side of things, there are a lot of ways to contribute. If you're early in your career or your schooling and you don't really feel confident in those technical abilities, but you still want to help out, there are a lot of ways to do that. The biggest thing that I've seen is open source, community translation projects. They're a great way to help. And there are platforms like Weblate on the right, the icon. It's also an open source product that allows projects to create an open translation board where you go in, you select the language you want to translate to, and they'll give you all the untranslated strings of text in the project that you can go and submit for review. It's a great way to, increase the reach of things. So I think that's always a good thing. Another way you can help is by, adding onto the documentation. Say you use an app a lot, you know it in and out, but you know that the tutorials or the wiki, they're not very good. Now, what's stopping you from going in and adding a tutorial, adding to the wiki, helping people who might come in the future and they want to use this app, but it's tough. It took you a long time to get to the level of skill you're at now. So going through and fixing a small typo even, that's a big help. And finally, things like design elements, icons, pictures, creating those and sharing those, that's a great way to give back. I know for me personally, this part of, apps and projects is where I struggle. So seeing public and available icons and graphics for me to use and just pull, it's always a big help. It's a big relief. And one of our speakers, Astrit, he has a project that serves this goal, which is great.
All right. Do you want me to move over them?
Yes. All right. On to the speakers. This is the collaboration is key contributing to open source software. And the rest of the presentation will flow like this. We'll hand the mic over to each guest and we'll have them share their story, what they did, how they got to where they are, and hear their thoughts and reflections on the theme of open source.
Yeah. And then we'll also have a few guided questions for both of you after you had a chance to do your opening remarks. We'll start one by one. I'll allow Adem to introduce our first guest speaker.
All right, so our first speaker is Mr. Redjan Ymeraj. He's a full-time developer and the founder of the Wellness Plus Fitness Club platform. He also maintains a list, an initiative, Awesome Made by Albanians, which showcases projects from the Albanian community in tech. So we're going to have Redjan share his journey in open source development, his entrepreneurial path, and his insights and thoughts on what we can do to build community-driven projects. So I'll ask the first question. So Redjan, thank you for coming today. How can
Thank you for having me.
initiatives like the Awesome Made by Albanians list influence the participation of other members of the Albanian tech communities to contribute to open source development? And what can we do to encourage more people to contribute and join these communities?
Yeah, well, first of all, hi everyone, and thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to share some of my journey, and also it's a pleasure to see that there are young people who would like to learn and to understand, you know, the ins and outs of our, let's say, ecosystem and our profession. Yeah, as I said, I am a software developer. I initially I graduated in mechatronic engineering. Software development was something that I found I found on the way, and it's something that it stuck with me, and I liked it, and it was quite a path to, you know, to recover and to catch up with everything, because of not having to, you know, because I didn't study software development. And I think the fact that I had to study a lot, while I had to depend a lot on the community and on the resources, it also shaped me toward the path about on, let's say, working with open source and starting to contribute to open source. Because not being dependent on, you know, on the education system, on learning on university, let's say, and having resources like learning on books and following school courses, university courses, I had to depend on learning on tutorials, on following online courses. And to be honest, when I started this back at 2015, there wasn't a lot of resources online. And there was, I mean, back then it was an online platform which is called Linda. And Linda, it's right now is actually LinkedIn Learning, because they bought Linda back then. And I still think it's the best online learning platform that has ever existed. It had like really cool courses, and but they were expensive and still are. And I think that right now, when you see that the resources that there are available, I think it's pretty cool, and it's pretty fortunate for the people who are, let's say, in the field. And my journey started as a PHP developer. I am a software developer. I'm a full stack software developer, mostly building web applications with PHP and Symfony as a framework. But I also have a lot of experience in front-end development and also on mobile. And during my journey, I think that I let's be honest, like, we noticed that the open source community, it's not that present in Albania. So when I started seeing some glimpses of people who like Astrit, like that they were contributing, they were building something, then this was the reason why I thought that it was a good idea to build a public repository like also by Albanians, with open source projects that would showcase people that are, you know, that come from a background like, you know, like you and me, or someone would feel that someone who came from a background like them would took this initiative to contribute. So maybe that would inspire someone that to do the same. But also, why not connect and grow the community of open source? Fortunately, right now in Albania, there is especially one big organization who celebrates open source, and they also do occasionally. They also do events about open source, which is good. And I think it's going to open the let's say the door to many other people from Albania to do the same.
Yeah, Redjan, I wanted to ask you a question. I remember when we first were brainstorming with Adem about this topic. I personally am from the medical field, like healthcare. So I told Adem, I have no idea about technology and data, but let's find something that a lot of students don't know about and that they can use, especially college students who are studying computer science. And Adem was very passionate about this topic, and he believed that, you know, it's very useful for students to get involved in projects like this. But when we were researching for guest speakers, like the name of both of you came up as people who were very accomplished, not only in open source, but also on your own professional life, entrepreneurially. So I wanted to ask you that, how do you balance, being a, full-time developer and founder of like a platform like such as Wellness Plus? Like, can you share a little bit about that platform specifically, like how you started that journey, but also how do you balance, that obligation with contributing to projects that are volunteer work like open source?
Yeah, I mean, in my case, so my involvement in open source, it started with a PHP SDK, a PHP library, which is about enabling PHP projects to use the Firebase API for sending. For those who don't know, Firebase it's a service offered by Google. All the push notifications that you receive on your, especially on your Android phones, they come from Firebase. So this is it's one single service in the world that does that. There are others who does that, but they also they piggyback, let's say, on top of Firebase. So yeah, my involvement was with creating this PHP SDK because at the time I didn't see a very good let's say option. And then I've been fortunate enough to work right now in a full-time developer on a company called Sulu. They are the authors of a CMS, so an open source CMS, a content management system, which is based on Symfony, which is a PHP framework. They are, say, the most popular open source Symfony-based CMS out there. And look, I would say that it's not easy, but it's easier when the open source is not your work. So what I mean is, so I've done open source and I do open source, and especially at the company right now, we do open source because we maintain the CMS. So there is a big community of developers who uses our tools. And it's fun, but it's easier, let's say, if you don't do that all the time, or it's easier when the open source, let's say, is part of the hours of work. What I mean is, if you have an open source project and you want to spin that off and you want to, to make money out of it, then it's hard because you need to find and it's one of the biggest challenges, right? Monetizing open source software is one of the biggest challenges that our community is having. But in my case, my projects have been just for fun and just helping out the community, or they have been a part of my day-to-day job. So when we contribute to the CMS, we as Sulu, we spend work hours in order to contribute to our CMS, and which it returns back because it helps us out with acquiring new clients or acquiring sponsorships or from companies, which later on via those sponsorships we offer them support. But in my case, it has been a little bit more challenging because I also have a business to run. I have Wellness Plus. Wellness Plus, it's a platform for managing fitness centers, and we are currently operating in Albania, Kosovo, North Macedonia, recently also Italy, and it becomes also, let's say, harder when you when you have a family. Like I'm also a father, so it becomes more and more difficult and challenging. But with time, with years, you learn to differentiate between the, let's say, necessities and between things that are more urgent. And you start to also postpone some of your client requirements, so you understand which one is important and which one is urgent and which one is not. So you start to swim those in those waters, and but it's fun, it's challenging, and one thing I would like to add is the more you start working, or the more you work on the open source side, is the more you understand that there's levels to this game, and you start challenging yourself more and more every day, because and you see your colleagues work, and you see other people that are not afraid to put their work in public, and which is something that me personally it inspired. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something you can jump into, you know. I've tried that and it didn't end well. So you have to go back, start over, and go bit by bit, learn as you go.
I
Yeah.
just want to add something very quickly. What Redjan tried to say is that there's no balance. That's the answer. There's no balance.
Yeah. So the thing about work-life balance, that's not. Yeah, no. So what
No.
exists is an understanding wife and a not understanding wife. So that's the real answer. So like she either understands you or she doesn't. So there is no balance. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially when you have your work, and when you can take your work with you, you know, the balance on the work side just doesn't happen. But so, you know, you didn't go to school for computer science or programming. You learned it on your own. And I think that comes with its own benefits. You know, I came from an academic background. I learned programming mostly for school. And I found that going into creating products was hard. It's not something that I was taught. So, and they don't really guide you on how to get started with actual creating products that can be used and shared with people. So I just want to say, how did you get to creating Wellness Plus? What inspired you? How did you get started? And how did you differentiate yourself from the other fitness management platforms in terms of how the users use it, the user experience and the business impact?
Yeah, one of the things that I mostly proud myself of is building products. So I'm a software developer, which is really concentrated in product development and product building. And I think it also has to do with my upbringings, because I, I am very, like, I'm a person who's very oriented in seeing results and quick results on, you know, on my day-to-day life. I'm very practical as a person, and I knew that my education was going to be engineering based, and so I always wanted to build stuff. And starting from also when I was in university, I wasn't a good student at all, but I always had my hands on building stuff. You know, building robotics devices, and you know, by using microcontrollers like Arduino or Raspberry Pi. Well, I mean, you wish you had a Raspberry Pi at that time, but Arduino, you could find it, and also this is something that followed me when I started programming, and I like it because it was something that it really, I could see results immediately, and I could get satisfaction from my work immediately. And when I started programming, I started doing like experimenting every week, experimenting on a new project. You know, how can you build a blog? How can you build an e-commerce? How can you build a chat? So and with time, I started building new applications, and then it came up at the gym that I was training at that time, that I heard that the owner was looking for software, and my first idea was, yeah, well, why don't I build him a software so I can train for free, so I can pay my my gym. And so yeah, I pitched him the idea. This was 7 years ago. I pitched him the idea. He liked it. I said, yeah, but I didn't say that I was going to to train for free. But the end result I was thinking was that one. And by the end of it, like, I worked for a couple of months, so like a month or two. And by the end of it, I say that, look, I mean, I believe I might have something here. And I started experimenting, started going to the market. it took me some time because I was not an entrepreneur. So I was an engineer first, and so that made it very difficult for me to sell a product, but also to believe in it the way that an entrepreneur does. And so it took me some years, maybe 4 years, 3 or 4 years, with a lot of back and forth, because like I would always go to the market. I would find, and the negative part of it was the market was not educated, so I had to work a lot on educating the market, the industry of fitness in Albania. And very often I would find clients that they were rude and they would not like think about why would they pay for a software to manage their gym. And then I would go back for like 2 or 3 months, work on more features and more features and more features, until I started understanding that the way forward was not going with the mentality of an engineer, but going with the mentality of an entrepreneur. And with the moment that I made that switch, that was when it all made sense, and that's how I managed to push Wellness Plus forward, and to find a path in the market, and that has been the way until now. And to answer your question about how my clients find it, it's now it's easier, and I think the way that we compete in the market is by offering, let's say, we are very concentrated in access control solutions, because we offer a very seamless integration with a lot of access control solutions, but we also, the fact that we grew in a very progressive way. So from starting small, we added the features that it was needed. They're really needed by the clients. So we didn't develop a lot of stuff and then sell a big software, but we sold what was really needed. So I think that is really something that our clients really appreciate.
And right, when you start, you're not going to build the perfect product right away. You're going to build a good enough product, have people use it, and learn more about what you need, and then
I think
just keep building upon it.
The best advice is build fast and fail fast. Because if I would build a software right now, a product right now, I would not do it. There's no chance I would do it the same way that I did it with Wellness Plus. I've also worked for 6 years. The last 3 of them were I was the CTO of an Italian startup called Witip. And I learned so much from them, and I really think that fast iterations and fast failing, it's the key to understanding if something really works or not. So, and also the first thing is, I would really advise someone, if you really want to put an idea on the market, don't develop anything. Start finding an alternative way to simulate the service that you would offer, and to see the response of the people before thinking about, look, I need $1 million to hire 1,000 people, and then and then go and build something. No, like just find something, a simpler way to test it first, which I didn't do actually.
Yeah, I think that's a really good advice. And throughout your remarks, you've given advice that not only is relevant to the field, but also in general. I liked really like when you mentioned that like work fast and fail fast. It's kind of like it's universal. Like even some students, like they don't get outside of their comfort zone, and if you are not willing to fail, you'll never be successful. So I think it's an advice that is relevant to many fields. I had a question actually, like recently, very recently. I think it was on the 16th. Like, France, the government of France, they went to Albania, and they announced that they're opening some form of program about coding, or like a school of coding. That Albanian students in the diaspora that they live in Tirana, for example, they can get involved. Like, do you feel like there's a shift that Albanians will gravitate towards coding and software? I know Astrit, the Kosovo, for example, has a large number of people who are involved in the tech community. Like we on our last webinar, we had a girl, 18-year-old from Kosovo, who got a few scholarships to study in the universities here in the US. And since a very young age, like 7 or 8, she's been involved in coding. Do you feel like that's something that will shift in our culture, especially back in Albania, or do you feel like coding is just niche and it will not expand on for the youth?
Yeah, I'll just go brief on this and also let Astrid talk something about the Kosovo ecosystem. Yeah, I also heard it. I wasn't there because for some time now I've moved to Italy for some months now, so I haven't been in Albania for the last events. But I also saw, because a lot of my friends were in in today's event or in yesterday's event. I think it's great, and especially with France, because they have a very good education program on AI. So they have invested a lot in the education system in the university about AI. So I think that will be very good for the young Albanians. Any initiative is great as long as it is done well, it is executed well. I have my doubts that that is going to be used in the right way in Albania. It's going to be practiced in the right way in Albania. If the France counterpart is going to, let's say, also invest with resources like people, so that they would also come and participate, I think that's going to be great, and a lot of young Albanians will, let's say, will gain from that. But if it's just like sharing like experience, and then the rest of the resources are coming from Albania, I don't think that's going to be a lot of, let's say, the outcome. I don't think it's going to be that that good, because we have seen this happen before. There were a lot of initiatives, a lot of investment from a lot of actors, international actors, and by the end of it, we didn't see any result. And it's also I feel that it's because there are a lot of Albanians that are really invested in technology.
Yeah. And Astrid, we're gonna transition to you as well, so you can do your remarks. But if you had anything to add, you may as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invite, first and foremost, and also thanks for the talk, Redjan. And I feel very inspired by what you said, actually. And it's crazy how similar your story and mine is. And when you're a maker like that, I haven't finished university as well. I have just gone rogue and dropped out of every unit that I registered and did everything in my own and didn't really even have time to study, to do projects. But to respond to that question in a bit, it's very interesting that in my view, when a population is getting out of a war, like the case in Kosovo, there is the time when most drastic changes happen. And what happened in Kosovo is that a lot of people came from diaspora and tried to invest, and quite a lot of ideas flourished back then, which made it possible that quite a lot of agencies opened in 1999 and 2000s, and people started to understand more the digitalized world and opening different kinds of agencies, which some of them, I think, zero positive, should be still open. There's Trokit, where I started working, Fracton, and quite a lot of agencies that kind of like made it possible to people to know that you can be a programmer. Because the biggest challenge, in my view, was that people wouldn't understand. Like my parents, I had challenges to convince that this is an actual work. You can actually live from this in 2010 and 11. Because maybe I can backtrack a bit even more, like how I started. I started back in my home when we got internet at home. There at that time used to be like the site Pixel, and it was the most, like the best feature ever, that you could drop elements anywhere on the space. And then by accident, I understood that you can do margin top minus 40 pixels, which dragged like a box on top of the bar. And oh my God, that opened like a whole universe for me. And then I started getting into it and doing websites in Pixo and what else was there, like styling MySpace pages and whatnot. And since then, it felt like I felt very passionate about the space. And then around 2009 or 10, took it more seriously. 2011 went to university, dropped out because I started working. And around 1 year after that, I founded my own agency together with another partner. And we mainly worked on the German-speaking market, mainly actually Switzerland. And for almost 10 years, we had the agency in Pristina up to 2019 when I moved out. Which actually, the reason why I moved out was because of being burned out, and that balancing that doesn't exist for us Albanians typically. But then I found that I wanted to do something way more different. And even though I was working with quite a lot of notable clients even back then, like BMW, Oitzerin and Beiersdorf, the founders of Hansaplast and Nivea and whatnot. But I was working on a space where it was mainly online marketing and search engine optimization, which is not a very nice space to be in because there's, how to say, you're writing blog posts and making it possible for people to rank higher, but it's not the, how to say, the main point and how it should work, which I didn't agree. And that's why I started like doing my own stuff and then kind of like burned out a bit out of that. And then decided that I want to move into a place where work and life balance is better, at least what recommendations said, and what I could research online. And on all of the top list was Scandinavian countries like Sweden and Norway and Finland. And that's why I decided to move to Sweden 5 years ago almost. And back then I started working on CSS.g. And the nice part about this whole thing was that I was trying to solve an issue for me. When I said similarities to Redjan, also what he said, that he was trying to solve a problem for himself. And all these open source projects, when you start solving a problem, and especially if it's as niche as possible, then that's going to open a lot of doors for you because you don't have that much competition, which is a good thing. And also, on top of that, I knew quite a lot of things about search engine optimization and what the true search engine optimization means, which in that case, for example, when I bought the domain css.g, the keyword CSS was in there, and I was competing with that keyword, which made it possible that I was on the first position on Google even before Font Awesome, which is like a multi-million-dollar company in States. And with that, it kind of like went out of control a bit because left and right, I was seeing feedback, users coming in. Up to now, I think it's 1.4 million downloads on NPM, about 50-something thousand duplicates on Figma, and I was putting it everywhere where it was possible. And the craziest part was that I actually wrote a full story on how I created CSS.g project and why it actually started, and that I actually painted every single icon with CSS, which is, it's quite rare. And many people might say like, well, it's just icons, it is whatever. But when it's your passion, I try to stick to it and like to believe on that if you love something truly, it can be amazing. And if I didn't think of that, it enforced quite a lot when on 2022, together with my wife, Lona, we were actually designing this whole project. We won the Figma Award. And the second on that competition was Google Material Design, which is, you already know how large that is. And it was a sense of pride, and not necessarily that I made any money out of it, but it was a quite nice thing to just see being appreciated by the community and how much impact it had on that sense in my career and in myself. It gave me much more confidence to continue further. And then about 2 years ago, I moved into one of the largest banks in Europe, for that matter, I think, which is SEB. And one of the reasons why I moved here was that actually they were starting to do this green design system, which for a bank is quite rare to be open source. And that what struck me quite a lot, and then said like I want to join this team and truly work on it. And then we started doing the green design system that I'm working now, where I am responsible for pretty much doing all the components, and SEB.io, which is sort of like the platform trying to bridge the gap between design and development when it comes to how we transform our components from Figma to code and vice versa. So that's in short a bit of my backstory. And yeah, if you have
Awesome.
any
Well,
questions.
yeah, I should
Feel
have
free.
done a introduction for you, but I think you
Yeah, no
covered
worries.
everything. So I'm gonna do the intro anyway because I think you deserve to be recognized. So
Thank you.
for anyone who missed this or who's on YouTube skipping forward and they're here now, this is Mr. Astrit Malsia. He's the creator of CS.gg, a widely recognized open source icon library with thousands of stars on GitHub and Figma. Mr. Malsia was awarded the Figma Award in 2022, like he mentioned, for his contributions in the design community. You mentioned a little bit about your journey and the evolution of the CSS.gg library, but I wanted to ask you a follow-up question. When you maintain, a popular project like that, how do you handle, contributions? Do you allow contributions since it's open source? Like, for example, if you're managing an open source project and I want to request to help out or like add a feature or add something like to ensure long-term sustainability of the project, how do you usually handle that? Can you show us a little bit behind the scenes?
Yeah, absolutely. Maintaining something that is quite large, you can't really do it without the community. And as of now, I think there's 1,200 applications that use it and about 50 already open issues that I don't really have the time to go through. Because that part, when we're talking about balance, even though Sweden is one of the best at work-life balance, I personally don't have yet that balance. And I am also fortunate to have an understanding wife who's a designer. We actually work together on our own design system. But to go back to that, if you want to contribute, and it's not for that matter just this project, but any project, is trying to understand first what that project is about, because you get all sorts of requests. And then you have to ask them, like, have you looked at the list already? Does it exist, or does this really help everyone else? And it's not just about the CSS project, but all the other projects that I'm involved in, it goes the same. You have to understand first if it fits in well on that project, and are you really going to commit to that? And if it's a positive thing, yeah, absolutely. I always approve those pull requests. But there are sometimes, honestly, on this space, people who want to maybe just do the tiniest contribution to just get their name in there, like slip it in. Maybe it's a typo or whatever, which is still fine. But in my opinion, you want to do something meaningful, because at the end of the day, you can show that open source project on your profile, and in turn, it will help your career and your general profession, because then people will understand that you are involved in those spaces. And where else better to do that than in open source projects? But maintaining large projects is absolutely not possible without the community, without other people contributing, and actually assigning people also who can help you out with maintaining those, and who have a good understanding on what it takes to do everything on a large scale project. Which actually is the case for example, on our design system where I work currently at SEB. It's quite large, and you have all types of teams and over 1,000 applications that all of them have their needs, and all of them come with those requests, and it's a challenge, definitely. But it depends if it's your passion or not. If it's a passion, you will do it anyways.
I know I've been guilty of submitting a typo or two
Yeah.
early in my schooling before I knew much. Once I started working and I had that experience, I had a deeper understanding of the things I was using, so it made it a lot easier. I think that's one of the biggest barriers for early students, early programmers.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, like you mentioned at the beginning, and it's very important to understand that everything on the web is open. And especially if you're a front-end developer like myself, every single tool that you use is open source, starting from your IDE to every framework that you use, to every library that you use is pretty much open source. And I can't even mention one that is paid or that is commercial that is as successful as any of these. And these are successful because they are open source. But in the other hand, what Redjan mentioned before, it can be an investment that you don't really see any financial return out of it, but you can use it to spearhead any other thing that it can be related. Like, for example, in my space, you can sell, I don't know, themes and stuff that are related to that project. Because if you think that, Tailwind, for example, if you know that library, it's mainly to style your websites. And pretty much all their profit comes from themes and components that they have outside of the library. And they made, like, I know the first launch when they did this was like $2 million in 24 hours, which was crazy. But that's what it means when you have that kind of audience, because if you convert even like 2 or 5%, it's good enough. But it doesn't mean that you can live off open source only, unless you dedicate quite a lot of time on it and really dedicate your time to just push out as much products as you can.
Right, and they do have a very interesting model. But on to the next question. The vision you have with your project, your open source, I'm sure it changed a lot as time went on, as you got feedback from the community. So how did interacting with your users, your community, change your vision of in your product?
Not that much, to be honest, because how to say, people who are looking for that sort of thing, they might have similar to ideas to that. So like the biggest request I had, like, have you tried to do a course, or have you tried to do more components or patterns or stuff that are related to CSS in general? And I happen to be quite passionate about everything related to CSS, and I'm quite involved even on the open source consortiums for the CSS group that actually builds the CSS features and follow up very closely those developments. And we are working together with my wife on doing some components and extend that to patterns and stuff like that. But we are also realistic that it takes time, and I have a full-time job, and it's quite difficult. And on top of that, having another design system that we're working, I haven't had really in the past months that much time to work on it, but it doesn't really change the vision that you have for it, and it shouldn't change it, because then you're building something that people might ask for, but is much better, in my opinion, to build something that they don't even know that they need. Because in that case, you have a chance to really build something nice, because otherwise you're just going to be one of the other projects that you see plenty on this space, which is nothing wrong. But if you want to find that niche area, it's going to be much more difficult. So I kind of like am more stubborn in that sense, that I don't really allow anything to affect my opinion about it.
Yeah, I had a question as well, because I was listening to your story, but also I did a little bit of reading on my own. I know when we first got together and brought up this idea about this webinar, we learned about the award that you won in 2022, and you touched a little bit on that as well. But did that impact your career? Meaning, like, in terms of like new opportunities, like new doors that opened up? And to add on top of that is like a follow-up question is, since now the platform has been widely recognized, and I'm sure like after the award even more, have you ever like thought about like transitioning it, like monetizing it, or is like why don't you contribute so much, like so many hours for something that is open source and I'm assuming free use that everyone can use without paying? Like, is there any point of view that wants to monetize it? Like, where's the balance in that?
Yeah, super great question. I'll answer the second part first. I started this more like a passion project and never really thought about commercializing it. And it was more like a challenge to build 100% CSS only website and icons and everything. And that was the idea. But as it grew, as I saw that I'm investing more and more time in it, I wanted to commercialize. The only financial profit that I get out of it right now is ads. I have like a box there where you can click ads, or like you see tailored ads. I didn't put like Google AdSense because it can show you everything. So it's only related to software. That's how I have monetized so far, at least to pay for itself, because I try to do that. Like if I launch a project, I want to pay for its own services, at least that. But it's quite hard if you go first open source and then try to monetize it. If you have a complementary thing in there, like for example, Tailwind with the components, if when I'm going to do patterns and components, those are going to be paid. And also I did another collection of 6,000 glyphs, which was a file that you can actually purchase on the Figma community. And that way I could get something out of it. But honestly, at this point, it's not that important for me. And it's on that category that is hard to do it. It's hard to have like a subscription on top of it because it's an icon collection, unless you want to commit and build like 30,000 icons that pretty much if you search, you're for sure going to find every single icon, and also make it very customizable. And all of that takes time. All the other projects that I know of on this space, they have like a 4, 5, 6, and 10 people team, which it's not that I'm not at that point yet. And to answer the first question regarding the Figma award, I keep that here, and I feel quite proud about it because it's you can't even have this anymore, because Figma doesn't give awards any longer, and it makes it even more special that you can't even get it. But awards helps you with the recognition, but it's not necessarily that opens the doors. I think the passion that you have for the work and the contributions that you give, like Redjan as well, like that's what truly opens the doors. And it's very important on this space to have a proper GitHub profile with open projects. And one thing that Redjan said as well struck me quite good. When you feel proud about something, you just put it out. You don't care because you know that it potentially is good, and you don't care about how people maybe might judge you on that end. And then when you feel proud about it, it's just out there. You can go and inspect and read everything about it and look at every single piece of code. And it hasn't necessarily opened any doors, but absolutely, I would say, it has been a talking point with everyone that I have had the discussion from that point and on. And maybe it's just worth mentioning that I also had twice been awarded also from Adobe. Strangely enough, I've been since 2011 a front-end developer, but all the awards that I've had have been mainly related to design. I guess it's not something that really exists on front-end world, but yeah, if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And I think you made a really great comment, because I know Redjan mentioned something very similar when we first talked about, when you do open source, like it's good that you do, you contribute and you have the project. But one of the reasons why some people might be afraid or might have second thoughts about contributing is because your work is out there for people to quote unquote judge or, make, comments. But like you mentioned, when you're proud and you are confident in your skills, then that kind of gets out of the window of that aspect. But I'm very excited about hearing both stories. Now I want to turn into more of like a Q&A. So what I'll do is I'm gonna open up the floor to the audience, and if they have any questions. Usually how we do these webinars is after the guests have done their remarks and we've asked our guided questions, we allow the audience to ask any questions for 10 to 15 minutes, and then you can either raise your hand and we'll call on you, or use the chat feature. So this is the time to ask questions and learn, but this is also a time where both of the guests can kind of go back and forth, interact with one another, because I know you guys might have sometimes differing opinions or new perspectives. So we encourage, conversations and dialogue. So that's what we'll do for the next 10 minutes or so. So I'm gonna wait for the chat a little bit, and then if there's no questions, I know Adem has a lot of questions.
I can ask a question to Astrit.
Yeah.
So while we wait, well, one thing that I also I really like to know is because I want to know the answer, because it's a problem of mine, is how do you differentiate the time between things that you have to do and things that you like to do. What I mean is, like, I very often find myself in having to do things for my full-time job, but my mind is on the things that I really would like to do with my company, or in other projects. I don't know, like maybe open source side, but also, I don't know, something else that it really attracts you from from your from the professional point of view. So, like, how do you navigate that? Because I personally don't do a great job very often. Like,
Yeah, I totally understand that it's very challenging, but over the years, I've learned one thing. You want to be absolutely independent of anything that you're doing, sort of like being in the cloud. And what I've built is strategically a system where it allows me to pretty much work on the same thing. And I'm fortunate enough that the work is quite similar to these fun stuff that I do. And I actually take the same aspects and just apply it across the board. What I mean by that, I have like certain repositories, and pretty much I have one folder in my Mac, which is dev. And on that one, I have multiple projects that I add certain principles, or like have a core theme that I built, for example, for Next.js. And I build the same features and systems for all these projects that I need. So basically, I'm having the same system for CSS.wg, the design system that I'm building with my wife, for SCB.io, the project that I'm doing at work with a green design system, and apply those features across the board. And then I try to share as much as possible logic from all of those. It, of course, is challenging at times, because you have to prioritize maybe breaking changes, or performance-wise stuff. I try to focus on those first, but as soon as I'm trying to build something more big as a feature, I try to make it as general as possible. Like, for example, a thing that I did recently was on Next.js, using indexed DB to store the data, everything on your computer, to have it offline, and in turn to have less API requests. I did that for CSS.wg, and I'm using in my own portfolio and on SCB.io, and pretty much all of these projects. And that's how I found the sweet spot where I can actually exchange components, exchange logics in between these projects. And I have been way more efficient that way. Otherwise, focusing only on one of those, I truly have found that very, very challenging. And what has been the most challenging for me is brain switching, or I don't even know how to put that term. Basically, when you're working on a project and then you have to switch to the other, is like so energy intense, and like you need to completely switch out of that to get into the other. That has been very difficult at times. And like even trying, when you have your ideas in head and you want to put those as fast as possible on code so that you don't forget, is I haven't figured yet out, and I don't think that we'll ever figure that out. But I try to make features as similar as possible, and then work simultaneously on those. If that answers your question.
yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, having like a framework for your work definitely helps out switching context between one project to another, because you really accelerate, let's say, the transition period, so you don't have to switch the world every time that you do that. Yeah, it's something that I share as well from a technical point of view. Yeah.
Oh, I have that same problem, and I'm glad to know that it doesn't go away with experience. And when it comes
Yeah.
to time, I was kind of in the same boat. I was doing full-time school and full-time work, and I just didn't have any time for personal projects or things like that. But now it's become a priority of mine and something I want to do now that I've come into more time.
It's kind of funny that most of people say that all developers suffer from imposter syndrome. And you go like, you start the morning very positive, then it goes down, and then again up, and then again down. And then if you have like personal projects, and I think it's actually a curse when being a front-end developer, or I would say maybe a maker like Redjan is and myself, when you try to build stuff, because you don't really know where to stop. And I can't even put in my mind on how many domains I have bought and sold over the years to buy the domain because I'm going to build a project and then never really find the time. Like I actually recently, just a few weeks ago, I sold the domain WordPress, word.press.ss to Automatic company, the WordPress consortium, the people who actually build WordPress, because I was thinking like building some stuff on that. And as I've been involved quite a lot with WordPress since 2010 almost, but you don't really find the time for that. And it's truly a curse, because then you spend energy thinking and maybe buying domain and starting at some point, and then you drop off 10% as you've made progress, and then do something else is quite interesting space to be in. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, I have a question for both of you. Right now, seems like everyone wants to talk about AI, like artificial intelligence. It's in like everywhere. So I wanted to ask you, since both of you have had experience for a long time before AI was like, quote unquote mainstream, do you feel like it's a tool that you utilize daily? It helps you, or do you think that it's more so uh, a distraction in the sense that, you know, a lot of people are you know, either not able to utilize it fully or don't really know how to use it, and it becomes, you know, in medicine, for example, like there's this thing that, you know, you can't be a jack of all trades. Like you really need to know one thing very well. With AI, I feel like a lot of people think that they're experts in everything now. You have someone who has no idea how to code, but they can go to like ChatGPT now, and right away they're a master at coding. Same thing for medicine. Like right away they're now a board certified physician because they can go on ChatGPT and get everything in 2 seconds. How do you feel that has changed the, you know, the general feeling in the field of coding, the AI, but more specifically ChatGPT?
Redjan, do you want to go first?
Please go.
In my workflow, it hasn't changed that much, but of course, it has made things easier because it all depends on how you use it. I don't give it that much freedom to actually do the whole project, but I try to use it as a knowledge base to actually find the information faster, to collect that information that I need, and more like a guidance. When you have a problem and you don't have an idea how to solve that, it's much faster to access that. I use a application on Mac, is called Raycast, and they have all kinds of models there. You can open like a chat, and then you have your own scripts and extensions that you can connect to it. So I don't necessarily leave it to change my code, and how it will impact the, I mean, it's kind of like a vibe now that everyone wants to do something with AI, but it will fade away in a few years, I'm pretty sure, and things will go back to normal, because it's there's, in my opinion, there's no chance that it will replace developers anytime soon. And to prove that point, sort of, Figma had a launch now where they launched Figma Sites. And one of the key features was there that they're going to use AI in pretty much everything. And then I just went and created a small website, hit publish. The very first thing I did was inspect the code, and it was like full of divs with classes, which actually is terrible for your site, and especially in Europe. I'm not sure how in States is working now, but in Europe there is a law that has gone actually is in power now for Accessibility 2025, which will obligate every large corporation that faces an application to customers to apply to certain rules when it comes to accessibility. Like you have to have your site accessible, you have to have your site responsive, have actual proper contrast, and many other things that in my work, for example, we are obligated to do those things. And when it comes to that, good luck that AI will help you out with that, especially if you have a legacy project or like an old project that you have to go and you're forced to fix things. It's more of a noise as of now, because if you remember a few years ago, Web3 was all over the place. Where is that now? Like you hear maybe a few people mentioning it. It will definitely help you out with becoming more faster, maybe getting answers more faster. Maybe you can build small things here and there. At least that has been my experience. Maybe I'm a bit more hesitant to give pretty much all the access to AI to do that stuff for me, but that has been so far the experience.
I know in the US, as far as I know, we don't have restrictions like that with accessibility, but we all tend to follow Europe's rules when it comes to the global websites, right? All the big companies, they implemented all the GDRP. I forget the
GDPR.
privacy law.
Mhm.
Yeah, a lot of American companies follow that anyway, even though they're not necessarily required to.
Yeah, if they're gonna operate in Europe, they will have to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion regarding AI, it's a bit different from Astrit's opinion. So I think that it definitely, my opinion definitely changed from 2 years ago. I also thought that there was a lot of hype into it, but I've come to learn that there are definitely advancements which I think that are really worth looking into it, and I think that more and more it's moving fast, and it's growing fast, and it's advancing very fast. And I think that, like, for me personally, it's not like it's helping that much in terms of real coding, because when I mean, at a certain level, you don't need basic stuff. So you don't need boilerplate code. You don't need the repetitive stuff that you do. You already done that millions of times. Like you ask for questions, and also like a lot of IDEs do that already. So you don't need AI to generate template code for you. But what I think that personally, I've used it on some, let's say, some edge cases on programming, some like highly adaptive, like highly what is that, like highly improved, like algorithmic searches or something like that. That maybe I could search for a specific use case and test it on specific use case, but mostly I've used it on the business side. So at Wellness Plus, when I'm looking for any when I try to research the market, but coming back to programming, for me it has been helpful when I start to look for, I don't know, like, for example, I have this need right now at Wellness Plus where I want to let's say improve my platform, or start monitoring more, because the Wellness Plus has grown a lot, so I need to monitor my platform, my infrastructure more. And using, especially using Gemini of Google, I think that has been more helpful to me. I think that it has been very helpful in this case. So suggesting different, let's say, options for different what kind of services to use for different alternatives. But I think that we're gonna start talking differently in 3 or 4 years. I think the advancement is going to be more. And I have a baby here, so it's crying. Sorry about that.
No worries. it's all good on our end. But no, I agree. AI, I was very anti using AI for anything last year, the year before, mainly because I didn't want to get lazy and, forget all the basics. But I think lately it has improved a lot. And like you said, with boilerplate, it's just made things a lot easier and quicker. But I also think if you don't already know what you're doing, it's not going to help you too much. You need to understand what it's doing. Because I know I've tried using AI, heavily at some points just to see if how it is, because I don't use it too much. And I've had times where it has made the code, but there were so many issues and so many issues that don't show up at first glance, or issues that aren't highlighted by the IDE. You only find it out later when you're testing. So I think things like that, they'll still require someone with a good, technical knowledge to work with.
Yeah,
Something I can.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah,
please
go
go.
ahead. Then. Oh, no.
No, I just wanted to add that for me, something that I've seen that has been successful from the AI side, I think it's more scripting. So when it comes to scripting, like shell scripting or bash scripting, or Power, what is it called? The Microsoft, what's it called? The PowerShell scripting on Microsoft, that has been very helpful for me. And I've used Cursor for it, and it's been quite nice. But when it comes to business logic, then it's completely different game. So I've tried it a couple of times just to test it, and it's unusable. It's unusable.
Mhm.
But the problem here is that it has raised the bar for junior developers. It has raised the bar because now companies tend to not need junior developers because they can substitute it by adding some extra time from a middle developer, let's say, by using a coding assistant. And also, this is becoming a negative aspect because junior developers now, instead of just, let's say, learning to do it themselves, they're using AI from the get-go, and that is really, I think, it's impacting negatively in their career because they don't learn how to do stuff on their own.
I wanted to touch on those points, exactly what Redjan said, and is the worry that I have is that the younger generation are getting scared when they see like news that AI is going to take developers' jobs on the future and this and that. I use it daily. It's a very good complementary tool to help you out with redundant stuff and like just getting the information faster. Like I see myself much more rarely going into Google, for example, searching for the answer or stuff like that, because you have it there, like on the chat with Raycos. But on that point, the people who are getting into the space is definitely more different from the time on how myself had to do. Like you actually have to go and learn fundamentals, but now you're just starting with building something without actually knowing how that should work. And where it becomes a problem, as the project gets more and more complex, then AI, it's hardly going to help you. It's very good at maybe tackling a certain task, but knowing the overall project is much more difficult, at least now. It probably will become much better later on, but as of now, it's very difficult to know the whole project unless you're doing something locally that understands very well your project and yours is giving you every time a good answer. But still, if you're going to spend then more time refining those things and you have to focus quite a lot of time improving the efficiency, where's the value there? And that removing that barrier on the beginning where you actually know the fundamentals and then you get the idea from AI, or maybe it helps you with the redundant stuff, in my opinion, it will transform the industry where we are, but it won't necessarily replace jobs. Maybe I don't know, maybe certain jobs will be replaced, but as far as I see, Like, for example, in front end, it's like super hard to debug CSS or like these accessibility stuff, because you have to go there and test those out and like have a reading machine and go through that. And that, at least so far, there isn't that much focus on that, and it might change, but it feels like it's scary for those getting started.
No, I agree. I've heard the same thing from many, new programmers. I think we have time for one more question, right, Ray? I'll ask this because I've been wondering.
Oh, yeah, we can do one more for sure. I know we can.
Okay. For me, I have always had trouble taking an idea and, putting it and making it into a usable product, So I just have one question for both of you. Do you have any advice for people, for young engineers and programmers who want to make the move from, someone who can code, someone who can engineer, to a creator?
You want to go first, Astrit?
I think you're muted.
Oh, yeah. Astrid, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I had muted. What I was saying is that it depends on what your situation is, how your finances look like, because you have to be very careful on that end. In my opinion, if you want to become a maker or like create any other side project, at least on the beginning, never start doing only that, because it will have an impact on your life, and you will feel disappointed if it doesn't succeed, because necessarily not all of them will succeed, or at least at the point that you expect to get a living out of it or become rich, or I don't know what your goal might be, which is very important. What is your goal with that? So if you want to get started first anyways on the space, you should have stable finances where that doesn't become a burden, because then you will start adding features and things that will help you out to stay afloat. But then will it change the meaning of that project? Will it change the meaning and what you wanted to achieve on the long run with that project? So that's why, in my opinion, always be stable first, safe on that end, at least maybe 50-50, doing regular work or where you get income, and then focusing on that. If you're that rich to do just the side project, maybe it's fine. I don't know, but that has been my experience, at least. That if you go full steam ahead on that and you don't really have any other meaningful income, it's difficult. When you create a family and when it gets important to actually be stable.
Yeah, I mean, what Astrit said is he touched on a lot of points. I mean, it's the journeys may differ a lot depending on what you do and where you are. What I personally would suggest to everyone that wants to start building stuff is that, first of all, it's not true that everyone should be a builder. So you don't need, not everyone should be a businessman. Not everyone should build stuff. And also like it's completely fine if for someone, if you just want to have like a calmer life, like with a normal job, and you can absolutely feel fulfilled with with your job, with your profession. Fulfillment doesn't come from building a business. On the other side, if you are someone who likes to do stuff, to build stuff, I would personally think that definitely be part of communities. So be part of startup communities, having people around with the same mindset. It's really helpful. Like, I've been part of the startup community in Albania for quite some time now. I've been participating in startup accelerators. I was one of the finalists in Uplift Accelerator in Albania, which has been a great experience for me. It really shaped, let's say, the path that I followed later on with Walnut Plus. and definitely the community helps. But when it comes to basically doing the job, then you will find that, especially if you are part of a startup ecosystem, you will find that there is this dogma that you are either in 100% or you are not in. I don't think that is true. I don't believe that is true. It hasn't been true in my case. I have a business, I have a full-time job. I've had the need to also work on freelancing projects. And and I don't think it's the best way. If there is a possibility for you to not have to do all of these extra jobs, and then great, it's great for you, but it doesn't mean that you cannot do it differently. So it doesn't mean that if you're not all in 100%, then you don't do it at all. I don't believe that is not true. And what Astrit said is completely 100% true, which is it's more important if you don't have a business rather than if you have a business and your family is suffering from it. So it's better if you have a safer life and a safer home, and rather than feeling successful, let's say, in a business, and then the rest of your life is destroyed. But as I said, test fast, fail fast, and especially just one example. I saw an interview of Peter Thiel. What is his name? The former CEO of PayPal.
Peter Thiel, yeah.
Peter Thiel, I think. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, we know what we're talking about, and he did this. He talked about this example that it was that a girl told him that, look, I have this amazing idea of people wanting renting their clothes to other people. You know, if I have I don't know, a dress, I don't use it, so I want to rent it to you. And he said, and he said, well, what is stopping you from doing that? And she said, well, I need the money, I need to hire people, I need to build that. And he said, no, what you need is you take a piece of paper, you put it at your dormant door, and say, clothes to rent. If someone knocks on your door, it means that there is a need for it. If someone doesn't knock on your door, then you don't start at all because there is no need for it. So just find a simpler way to test your ideas before thinking that. And also, when you test your ideas, you understand if that idea is really a problem for someone that you could solve them to, or is it only a problem for you and your mother because she wants to support you and say that, you know, yeah, everything that you are doing is great. You know? So yeah, test that out there.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much. Thank you for both you, Redjan, and Astrid. Astrid, I'm gonna let you do a final remark as well before we close this, just in case you want to add something, and then I'll go ahead and do some housekeeping at the end.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the invite. It was quite a pleasure to meet also Redjan, which I didn't know that I could make this quickly a friend. At least that's what I'm aiming for. And it would be nice to chat later on as well, and maybe grab a coffee when I'm around Albania or Kosovo or something like that. But other than that, it's very good thing that you're doing, and keep on going. I really enjoyed this. And whenever there is a contribution that I can make about the Albanian community, I will definitely be out there. And it was a pleasure. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much to both of you. I'll just do some quick housekeeping, just to let everyone know, especially those who are going to watch this later on YouTube, that we're going to continue our webinar series on May 31st and June 1st. We're going to have a healthcare weekend. On May 31st, we're going to focus on dental school, and then on June 1st on medical school. So we're excited to bring those webinars. Additionally, in late or mid-June, we're going to have a webinar about startups, where we'll tell a little bit about, the question there at Dion Post today, like, should everyone be a builder or a business owner? We're going to try to navigate and explore that in our June webinar. But it was a pleasure to join Adem, Astrit, Redjan, everyone who's here today. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm not one who knows a lot about technology and data, but I'm one who wants to learn, and I think it's very beneficial because it's an industry that's growing. That's where the future is. No matter what you do in life, tech is always going to be there. It's become I think they did a survey. They asked some students, what's something that you cannot live with, and like 99% of them said their phone. So it's just something that whether we like it or not, technology is going to be here for the foreseeable future. And then I want to just show this to everyone that maybe it's their first time that they're hearing about us. If they want to be connected with our organization, they can find us on Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as on our website. On our website, there is a link to become a recipient of our newsletter, which we send out monthly. There's also a community group me, where there's more like the informal conversations, some memes and things like that. But we have two sign-up forms. The one on the left is a feedback form that, if you have any feedback and want to see webinars on a certain theme or something that you want us to explore, make sure you fill that out. And then the QR code on the right, on my right, is a QR code that allows you to officially join the community by filling out our interest form. Other than that, it's been a pleasure. Like I mentioned, I want to again thank Astrit and Redjan, especially because of the timing difference. I really value it and appreciate the time that both of you put into this. Like I said in the beginning, I don't think we could have found two better speakers to represent not only the space, but also your personal journeys. One thing that as an organization we want to do differently is that we want to explore the theme from an Albanian standpoint. Like, of course, we're talking about coding and there's no language and there is no identity when it comes to coding, but I really do believe that as people, Albanians are unique, different. We strive for excellence, as Redjan said, but as also Astrid mentioned a little bit in the beginning, sometimes we can also get burnt out, and then, like Redjan said, we can also fail. We're not immune to those things. But those are kind of like my closing remarks. I hope to see most of you or some of you who are here in future webinars. And then Astrid and Redjan, if there's anything else that we have in this sphere, like another webinar or another talk, you definitely are going to get an invite from us if you're interested in joining. But other than that, I'm going to close this recording real quick, and you guys are free to go